Hey, hey, welcome to Your Best Podcast with me, your best life coach, Teemaree, and an amazing guest that you are going to absolutely love. First off, we're here to talk about brain health for growth, honey. Okay. So you know you want this in your life, for your brain, for your life, for your growth. So get ready because I have someone that is phenomenal at this, has made it her life's work. Let's break it down. Dr. Shafer is a musician turned physician, honey, a neurologist. Okay, we're going to break this down. I get excited just at that because artistry, intelligence, personal growth, woohoo! Okay, I digress. Anyhow, she's also a Jay Shetty certified life coach, an author, a publisher, and a host of her own podcast, which is mixing inspirational growth, health, and healing, which is called Talks with Dr. Shafer. She's passionate about helping people, reclaim their stories and build their most beautiful future. If we had a live studio, you'd be giving it up right now for Dr. Shafer. What's up, Dr. Shafer? Welcome to Your Best Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction. I so greatly appreciate you taking the time to learn my story and us being able to share our stories today and also bring listeners into it and try to impart some healing and health guidance for them too. It's great to be here.
Oh man, I'm so happy to have you here. Here on Your Best Podcast, we have a good time. So we get together and we get into conversation and we chill and we laugh and we let things go and we also learn and grow. So I know that you were perfect for a number of reasons. We're going to dive right in because I'm very, very curious. First off, what state are you in or country are you in?
Right. So I live in a little city called Petoskey, Michigan, and I also live in Prague, the Czech Republic. I live a transcontinental life, so to speak.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'm glad that I asked that. What's up, Michigan? I live in Michigan. I'm in the Detroit area, and I went to Petoskey last year, and it's beautiful there. So, yay! Awesome. I'm glad I asked that. It's important to me to make sure that our listeners can access our guests. And so I like to kind of see where you are. I sometimes live a bi-coastal life, so I understand the concept of that too. And it's important to me to be able to always be able to take care of my clients and those that are seeking assistance from me. And I'm assuming that you are able to do the same thing. Is that correct?
Oh, of course. And I think, as you were alluding to, having a varied life experience, is so key in allowing us to really connect with people. And when we do know those little personal details about them, it can help us get a little bit less guarded, right? So you're from Michigan, I'm from Michigan. You already kind of feel your body language change, like, oh, that's interesting. And you feel comfortable to move forward. So I think that's really key. I love that you bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, I also really like to see where folks are from for a number of reasons. So, for instance, as our listeners are getting to know you and getting to hang even with me, this may be their first time. It's just great to see, like, oh, okay, this helps people see where you're from and maybe why you think the way you do and how you can help them and if you're in their area. And so it really, really helps out to just connect us all in a greater way. Another thing that I really wanted to ask you just right off the top, because I just think it's so fascinating. First off, what made you switch from music to medicine? Because that's such a, most folks will think just creative or just very maybe logical, pragmatic. So what made you shift from music to medicine?
I had a big life change. I got married very young. And when I married, I moved from New York City. I'd moved to New York City when I was 17. I was living on couches. I was a musician. I'd been in music since I was 14 professionally. And as I was entering adulthood, I was really diving into that. Then I met someone and got married. And as a part of that change in my lifestyle, we actually moved back to where I was from, which is Indiana in the Midwest here in the States. And when that happened, I had to pivot and decide, where do I want to focus my energy? And for me, a big part of my experience in music had always been connecting with people, using music to heal and to help people move on from trauma and things like that. I'd never shied away from those topics in my music. And so as I was deciding, what do I want to do with my life, it was not a straight line to medicine. I ended up going to psychology and getting a degree in psychology, an undergraduate degree. And even I was a volunteer and then researcher at the Kinsey Institute in Bloomington, Indiana. Anyone who's listening who knows that they do gender and sexuality studies. And as I was going along that journey and thinking of going into therapy with a focus on gender and sexuality, I then started investigating healthcare further and really fell in love with medicine. And so I applied. I was very silly. I applied to one medical school and I got in by the grace of God and then started on that journey. And just like most of the things in life, I think it's so important we have a flexible mindset, that we don't say, I am a musician. Or, for example, when I went into medical school, I had to decided that I was going to be a dermatologist. So if I was really fixed on that, then that's what I would have become. But instead, I've always had a more flexible look at life and been very open to new experiences. And in my third year of medical school, I did my neurology rotation, and it really just shook my world with regards to my plans, because I knew that that was the place that I should be, and that those were the patients that I was meant to serve and help on their journey. So that's where I ended up that's what I ended up pursuing with neurology. And then as life evolved, life coaching became a part of the experience. And what I love the most about life coaching is it really allows you to focus on some of the best parts of doctoring, the parts where you're really connecting with people and helping them to get to their why and their purpose and their goals, and really focus on their life and their health. And I've really loved to see how my career has transformed with evolving over time, and not being afraid of those changes, but really leaning into them and embracing them.
I love that. And I totally agree at having a flexible viewpoint on life and on seasons in life and on different ideas of our life, different ideas of ourselves, and what not only we can do, but what we're kind of here to do and being guided to do. Because I do believe that each and every one of us have many, many different facets that when we are able to move in a direction, surely, because we do need to have that, but we also have this kind of openness about us that says, well, let me also continually assess, because that's when, like in your case, I can totally see. I mean, it just even in what you're sharing thus far, this openness you have with life, this way that you're able to make these changes, not only geographically, but then also, you get married and then now you're looking at different career trajectories and what you're going to do. But there's this through line involved. This through line that wants to serve people and care for people. And so I think that we all kind of have that. We have this through line purpose or gift that can be used many different ways when we have that openness. And I agree with you. And, that's why I started to get into coaching, because I really love helping people to discover, reclaim, and enjoy those aspects. Because if we don't have help sometimes, we do get lost. So I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. I am curious though, what type of music? So what type of music did you play or were you engaging in? Tell us.
Yeah, so I was classically trained growing up, as anyone who starts when they're 5 years old and they're playing guitar and piano and taking voice. You're classically trained. I also had a large jazz influence in my life. Jazz was quite popular at the School of Music in Bloomington, Indiana, which is where I had a lot of my early life training in music. And so I really enjoyed that. But then, of course, as I was coming of age in the 90s and early 2000s, I was involved in pop music. I was involved in dance, house music at one point when I moved to New York City. I had actually gone to the subway just to practice. I lived in this tiny little, really one-bedroom apartment, if we were honest about coding, but it was sold as a two-bedroom apartment in the village with the four of us. There were four girls living in it together, four young ladies. And instead of just terrorizing them and singing at home constantly, I'd find places where I could go and just practice my skills and also be around other people, because I do take a lot of energy and I really enjoy that. So I had recruited some of my roommates to actually go with me this time to a subway, and we were singing a cappella in the subway, and someone heard and walked up and asked me if I would be interested in recording with him in his studio. And that was when I got into the more dance and house music. And I did, the things that you do when you're a young musician. You're recording commercials and, you're doing anything you can to make enough money to then invest in the next step in your career. So I really did a lot of everything, but I really came into my own when I started writing music that is akin to what you can hear in my theme song for Talks with Dr. Shafer, which is a song I wrote, gosh, I don't know, 20 years ago, called Impulse. And that was really when I started coming into my own musically, when I was really focusing on the lyricism and on the aspect of playing piano. Up until that point, I played a lot more guitar. But when I had that big transition in my life, it was one of many choices that I made, especially earlier in life, where I gave up my agency and my dreams and my autonomy for what seemed right at the time, because this is what I should be doing and this is what I should be going after, and putting what I'd worked for and my dreams to the side, or really even almost just erasing them like they didn't exist. And earlier in life, and as the years went on, the decades went on, I continued to do that. And I continued to seek, wonderful serving careers in neurology, for example, but also understanding that many people, when they are seeking out those careers, there's also an element of maybe we'll be good enough when, right? Maybe I'll be good enough when I can do this. And I think, even though I wouldn't have admitted that at the time, that there was an element of trying to prove worthiness. And then I went through some really big life shifts, and it was really set off kind of the pivotal point for me when a friend asked me, now I think it was about a little over 3 to 4 years ago, asked me, do you know that you matter too? Because really I had allowed, despite all of the accolades and all of my achievements, I had allowed my life and my personhood to really disintegrate. And it was almost like I just had fingers above the waterline at this point. And someone who knew me and loved me, my best friend, reached out and said, hey, do you know that you matter too? You've lost yourself in trying to serve others and satisfy others. And in that moment really started the journey of what now I've recognized to be my reclaiming my story and my autonomy in my life. And as that was evolving, when I was in that point in my life where I felt very isolated and very alone, and I thought that there was not much to be learned from my story because it just seemed so messy and so challenging, what was happening organically was other women were reaching out to me and asking for help because they were seeing me in these challenges, but seeing me from my perspective, I was struggling and I wasn't winning, right? But from their perspective, they saw something that they felt they could learn from, and they wanted help because they saw similar situations and circumstances for themselves. And that really led me on this journey of, what is it that I'm doing, right? Because this feels so in alignment with who I am, helping people in this way. And that really led me to becoming a life coach. And I went through the Jay Shetty certification program, which I highly recommend for anyone who's wanting to go on that journey and consider life coaching. It was so enriching on a personal level, as well as on a community level, getting to know people who are also on that journey and want to help people in that way.
Yeah, it's funny because as you talk about losing yourself on your journey, what I find is we all have these pitfalls. So as a high achieving person, high achieving people, yeah, that's part of the gift, right? So we always can see the new pinnacle. And so what'll happen is we're in the midst of it, but there's always the new pinnacle. So it's very challenging to train ourselves. It takes training and assistance and coaching and help and mentors to say, hey, this is how you balance your constant gift of the ability to achieve and this perspective you have with being able to be in the moment and with being able to honor yourself and with being able to enjoy what you're achieving along the way, climbing said ladder to anywhere, whether it's artistic creativity or deeper relationships or a better positioning or higher titles or more money, all these things that all of us get to enjoy while we're here in this form. And then even if someone doesn't identify as a high achiever, and they're just like, yeah, I just kind of enjoy my life and I don't really take things so seriously or whatever. There's these pitfalls to lose ourselves because, we all have these things. We enter into these seasons. Okay, well, now I'm married, so this must mean. Now I'm a mother, so this must mean. Now I'm a caregiver to a parent. I'm doing something and it starts off always with love and joy. It starts off always with an intention to be good and do and rise up to an occasion. But then it's very easy, right? Well, what about me? And some of us don't even realize that until we're so deep and far from that essence of who we are, where all of a sudden just something's wrong and we can't tell. So I think it's fantastic that you had that loving friend to share, to reach out to you. And, I also think it's wonderful that women, because that's another thing too, right? If we're seeing the new pinnacle or then yeah. And to be honest, here's something that we never have arrived. And that's both amazingly beautiful, right? We've never arrived. There's always more to learn. There's always more to do. And that's fantastic. And it also means that there's that pitfall again, right? Because let's say you're going for that new position. Okay, well, now you're new in the new position. And so now you're like struggling to catch your way. So you got there, but you don't feel like, yeah, I've arrived, So it's just fantastic that you share that. And I think so many of us, because I personally have felt that in various seasons of my life, on my trajectory and the various career paths I've taken. And I help my clients to see that as well. So I think it's beautiful that you have shared that. And so many of us can resonate with that experience and just know that as a listener, this is the most natural feeling. It's natural, no matter how you identify. We all go through this. Now, let's dive into a little bit more of your specialty, right? So how would you say that brain health shapes personal growth? How would you say that brain health shapes someone's personal growth or ability to personally grow, et cetera?
Well, the thing is, I think we often see our mental health and our brain health as something out over here. And when we think about our health, when we're making our New Year's resolutions, which this is kind of the time of the year where we're doing that, we are thinking mostly about physical. We're thinking, do I feel like I want to get stronger? I want to have my body look a certain way. Do I want to dress a certain way? Or we then lean into the accolades and the titles, the achievements. And we often don't pay much attention to our brain health and our mental health, which again are inextricably linked. Behind me, you'll see my certification for my board, and it's for neurology and psychiatry. Because even our board, our licensing board, understands that those two are inextricably linked, even though they're two medical specialties. You have to understand both to practice within one or the other field of neurology or psychiatry. So we have to get to a place as a collective if we want to grow and we want to function on a higher level. We have to get out of kind of this basic survival mode and do that mindset work. And thinking back to earlier in our conversation just a few minutes ago, when you're on a trajectory, as you mentioned, for your life, a body in motion stays in motion. You have to exert energy against what is happening, right? Against the status quo to change your trajectory. It's almost like you're on a hamster wheel, as I often say, and you're going to keep running on that wheel until you stop and get off. And often we focus on the getting off, but the hardest thing to do really is to stop, because stopping is to reverse your energy. And that requires really big intention. And that comes back to recognizing how important the organ of our body that is our brain, it's our supercomputer, it drives absolutely everything. How important being mindful, quite literally, of our thoughts, of the limiting beliefs that have been interwoven into the fabric of what we have grown up thinking about ourselves. We need to stop on that hamster wheel of going after those titles, or of living the life because I should, or staying in an abusive relationship because, well, this is a decision I made and I somehow deserve this. Whatever it is in your life, you need to stop so that you can get that energy back that you are using on running that race that never ends, running on that hamster wheel. Take that energy back. And once you do that, you need to be thinking, okay, who am I? How did I get here? You need to kind of look at the map of your life. How am I using my energy? How am I speaking to myself? How are my thoughts directed? Are they forward and growth directed, or are they kind of backward directed? I have something I call the butt wheel, where, we can either say, I want to do that, but I've never done it before. Right. And I've failed at other things before. So that's a negative, kind of fatalistic view of the world that's reinforced by our limiting beliefs. And that's a part of our neurology. That's a part of how our brain has been wired since early childhood. And like that hamster wheel, like that trajectory, we're going to keep doing that until we stop. And we capitalize on neuroplasticity. We capitalize on our amazing ability as human beings to rewire those beliefs. But we have to do it with attention. And so we can take that wheel and we can say, I've never done that before, but I want to. And then when you even just think about the directionality of your thoughts, you already, just by flipping the sentence on that wheel, you've changed the trajectory, you've changed the motion of your thoughts towards, I want to. And you have set out a path and have essentially given yourself permission in the place that's the only place that really has control over you, your mind, to move forward into things you want, even if they're scary, even if you haven't done them before. I want to do it. So making sure that our mental health, that our neurological health is the best it can be so that we can start on that journey is so incredibly important, because that's the organ we're using. We need to have sleep. We need to have adequate nutrition. We need to go where we can grow if we can't grow where we are. In other words, we need to make sure that we are not in environments that hinder our growth, right? We know a plant can't grow if certain conditions are present. It's not the plant's fault. Sometimes it needs to be transplanted. So there are so many things that we need to be mindful of as we're starting out on this journey, because we want to set ourselves up for success. So as we are doing this really important mindset work of changing our beliefs about ourselves, changing the way we speak to ourselves in our mind, then we can take those steps towards the future we really want. We can change how we're interacting with others, because we're not being sabotaged by these really well-entrenched limiting beliefs that we've carried around with us our entire lives.
Yeah, I really love that. And I do agree. I like how you interjected some things that are speaking to the physicality of the organ and practical things that can be done to foster health for the brain and the thinking system, as an organic system in our body. I agree with you 100% in regards to the mindsets and the ways that we manifest a new life for ourselves. Now, granted, depending on where anyone is, there's going to be a lot of already existing thoughts and challenges and obstacles, right? Because as you said, we all have, every single one of us has very, very deep, we consider our mind a computer. We have very deep, deep, deep programming softwares that were installed so many years ago. And the very exciting, but occasionally very traumatizing thing, okay? But hear me, listeners. This is exciting and traumatizing. So, depending on how you feel, you are not alone. If you feel scared, fearful, overwhelmed, stressed, you feel disappointed at the knowing that there are subconscious programs kind of directing your life, and that feels overwhelming to you, you are not alone. You're not alone. But guess what? That's also not the final answer. We get excited at this knowledge. Why? Because this knowledge means we can not only reprogram the deep subconscious program, but we can also totally erase it from the drive. Hey! Woohoo! Let me tell you, this is so exciting because as Dr. Shafer begun explaining, this is what we're talking about with coaching. This is what we're talking about with doing this work. And it is good. So I want to break it down. So if it flew over, if you're driving in the car, if you're doing something else right now and you didn't get this huge nugget, let's break it down one more time. There are programs running in your mind. Some of them you didn't place there, and they are driving the direction of your life. Now, sometimes that knowledge is overwhelming because it seems like, well, how would I get rid of it? How do I even know what's driving me? There's help with coaches. You're listening to two of them right now. There's help with professionals to help you to navigate those mindsets, because the exciting thing is that we can not only reprogram these programs, but we can completely remove them from our system if they no longer work for us. And this is the beautiful key. So thank you for kicking us off in that direction. Now, you like to help people reclaim their story, and you've been touching a little bit on ways that you help them, Dr. Shafer. So what would you say is a key? Like I know there's a key ring. But what would be one of your favorite keys to helping someone reclaim their story?
Well, starting off, it's what we talked about when you're on that hamster wheel and things don't feel right and you're running and you're like, if I can run faster, that's probably the problem. I'm going to run faster, but you're still on the hamster wheel, right? You have to be willing to stop, to change direction, to, as we said earlier, if you can't grow where you are, go where you can grow. And that requires being willing to edit. Sometimes we have to just dismantle what we've created because we built it in a way that doesn't serve us, that doesn't suit us. We built it for other people, and now we are living in it every day and every night. And those other people that we built it for based on their expectations or society's expectations or all sorts of external reasons, we made these choices and we reinforce them over the years and over our lifetimes. We have to come to the realization that the only person whose life this is ours. And the only person who's really invested in changing it and who can change it is us. And we have to put even more energy than we've been putting in satisfying people pleasing, accommodating others. We need to put that much and more energy into coming home to ourselves, retracing our steps, and being willing to set off in a new direction that's actually in alignment so we can stop feeling that dissonance that we experience every day. And that can be really scary because you can say, well, I've come this far. I don't want to lose what I've created. I don't want to lose what I have. But again, when you're willing to edit and you're willing to assess and you're really honest with yourself about, are these things that I have enriching me, or are they almost like weights and I'm trying to tread water and they're pulling me down below the surface line? And what I really want to do is learn how to surf the waves. You've got to drop those weights. You can't take them with you if they're a hindrance. And so the key at the beginning isn't even so much to focus on where you want to be. It's being really honest and acknowledging about how you got where you are, not looking around you and blaming everyone. Oh, you got me here and I did this because of you and I did this for you and look where I am. No, thinking, okay, kind of getting with your inner child. And instead of getting furious, like when your kid does something, if you're a parent, when your kid does something to get your attention and it's technically quote unquote bad, we're using air quotes, instead of getting furious with them, oh, you did this thing I didn't want you to do, oh, again, instead getting curious about, well, I know we don't want to do that in our home. Okay, so why? What's going on? What's driving this behavior? When we do that, we go from explosions and door slamming and ruining the evening because no one's connecting, no one's really hearing one another with our kids, right, for an argument. It's the same thing with ourselves. If we're shaming and blaming ourselves, we're not growing and we're not connecting. So instead, if we can try to parent our inner child and say, okay, instead of, I can't believe you did this to me and blaming everyone else, saying, why did I make that choice? Why did that make sense to me? And what do I need to do to show up differently in future interactions? Because I know it's kind of like a water slide, right? It's just that trajectory that we're on, these habits we've built about how we interpersonally relate, often in a people-pleasing way and in a way that's not loving or respectful to ourselves. How am I going to plan on showing up differently? How am I going to practice that in my head so that I don't go down that water slide of self-abandonment the next time I'm in a challenging interpersonal exchange, because it's going to happen tomorrow, the next week, the next month. It's going to happen. So now I need to invest in myself, know myself, and then create the tools so that I can make different choices. And as I get the data back from practicing that and experiencing that, oh, I didn't people please. And not only did the world not end, but I feel so much respect for myself. And I didn't lose anything, right? I simply gained my respect and I stayed true to my values, and I didn't lose anything from that encounter because there was nothing to be gained from that exercise that I know really, really well. So once we get those little data points about what it feels like to be true to oneself and to really live one's own story and edit and write it out, then we can start the really, really exciting part of saying, okay, I'm going to keep building upon this. And now I can really dream big about, what do I want to do with who I am? What are my values? What are my goals? And lean into that. And then you're no longer swimming upstream, because before you do this, before you have these mindset shifts, it's almost like you're swimming upstream. You're going with what other people want, which seems like that should be the path of least resistance. But the way it feels for yourself, for your nervous system, for this feeling of dissonance, and also you're having fight or flight responses over time, building up more and more, which is so detrimental to your health, because your brain and your body are telling you,
This
I
isn't the
can't
way.
pretend this.
Right.
This isn't the way. I can't do it. So you've been trying to go with the flow, but you're really swimming upstream. And so once you start really living in alignment and listening to your body and listening to what you need, all of a sudden it's like the floodgates open and you're just propelled into your fullest potential, because you're not fighting that useless fight anymore. You're not fighting yourself. And it's just it's such a blessing of being a coach to help people on that journey of coming back to themselves and understanding that the key was in them the whole time. They didn't need to be searching outwardly, but helping them just redirect that energy.
Yeah, I think that that is so it's I can see how you are wanting to lead people towards a sense of awareness first, self-awareness without visioning the future, and then creating changes so that they can change their mindsets toward things and move in the right direction. Okay. And as you're taking them in on that process, you're wanting for them to then gather their own personal data so that they can then feel a comfortability and start to feel a sense of what is working for them. So we have similar approach. We have similar results, different approaches, right? So for me, I feel like, and here's where this is key. Listeners, viewers, here's where this is key. And that's what Your Best Podcast is about. You're getting to meet phenomenal Dr. Shafer, and you're getting to get to know her and see like what her process is and how she helps people. And so if you're like, I like that way, then awesome. You have now access to a key that is going to help. You might be listening to me and how I think and what I'm doing and how I help clients. You might think that's for me. And that's the beauty of it. It's just like, and the reason why I feel it's necessary to put like, for us to pay attention to this is because when it comes to our mindset and when it comes to our emotional life and when it comes to goals and dreams and plans and shaping our lives, we're not yet there as a collective in realizing that just like it is with your physical, with your general practitioner doctor, we're not yet there at realizing that there is a host of professionals that can help you to do these things. And that actually it's very natural, normal, and wonderful to engage in the appropriate professional for you. And just like you would choose a hairstylist, your dentist, your general practitioner doctor, you're going to choose someone that you feel resonates with you, that moves the way you like to move, that speaks the way you like to speak. And so for some reason, I felt the need to point that out because I love that, Dr. Shafer, that you and I like to lead and help and guide and just be a stand for people making these moves. Because as you shared, and as I agreed with you, there are pitfalls, even for an alpha person, even for someone that's considers themselves highly driven or, goal-oriented, whatever label you want to slap on today. There's pitfalls out there and it's very challenging, right? And we all have the things where we may fall in. So I love what you're doing. The only way that I do it different is I start with the vision. So with my clients, we start with the vision because for some folks, the vision helps them have something to move and gets them to the awareness because sometimes the other way is a little bit overwhelming, let's say. Then they get to the awareness. Hey, here's my vision. I want to do that. Okay. What's the difference between where you are now and what you want to do? This. Oh, all right. Does that call for a transplant, as you said? Does that call for a more from you? Does that call from a less from you? And so then we get to work it out. And so I love that this work means so much to me because I love meeting professionals like you. I love knowing that I don't care. I'm going to sound cheesy. I don't care. But this changes the world. This helps people to say, hey, I now have dominion, power, ability over my life. And if I don't have it, it's normal and natural to reach out and get help. So that's the only way that we differ slightly. And then what'll happen is, I'll say, okay, what's the vision? Where are you at now? Not this concise. This is just over time, over sessions. What's the vision? Where are you at now? What's the difference? Okay, what would be some things that need to be changed? All right, cool. Let's go towards that. Okay, great. What's happening? How's that feeling? What are you seeing? And so isn't it wonderful that there are all these wonderful routes to this beautiful new life? I just love it so much. And I applaud the way that you're speaking to folks that, are very, what's the adjective? I would say kind of like data driven. Because sometimes this kind of stuff can feel a little woo woo to data driven folks. Do you find that sometimes?
It's really interesting because, again, we have been programmed to really focus on the tangible, which, we could get a little bit off topic, or though it's really on topic, and say, well, that's because tangible things sell, right? We like to be able to say, okay, if I buy this concoction, it's going to fix me. Right? We love that. It's very gratifying. It's very quick. It's very satisfying. And frankly, what are we looking for when we read a book or watch a show? We're looking for answers. We want the answers. As instantly gratifying as this idea may seem, what you and I know as coaches is that no one else has the keys to your destiny. Only you do. But they can help guide you back, and they can almost act as guardrails, not as fences. We don't want to fence you in. We want you to be limitless because you truly are. But we can act as guardrails when we're heading back towards those limiting beliefs, when, and not by saying, oh, don't do that, don't go there, but just asking the curious questions about, okay, what's driving that? What do you think is behind that? Because sometimes when someone sets a particular goal, the goal isn't really the goal, right? There's another goal beyond, maybe 5 goals ahead. There's the real goal, what they really want. And when we're focused on, well, my goal is to go to medical school because then I'll be a doctor, and because I want to help people. But often the real goal is, I want to feel like I deserve just to be, that I've earned my place in life. And if I do that, maybe that will get me there. And so then we see the underlying need is truly for that person to address those feelings of a lack of self-worth and get to why those are there. And once we address that, then the trajectory changes because we're no longer swimming upstream because we're just chasing this thing that's a falsehood. It's not even real or true, but we adapted this feeling. And it's almost like, it's interesting as you were talking about reprogramming, because, our computers that we're using to talk to one another today and our cell phones and everything, they get updates all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we often graduate from high school or university or whatever program you've gone through, and we're kind of like, okay, I'm done. Now I'm going to focus on achieving these external things because my learning is over. And we know that's the farthest thing from the truth. And that feels so bad in our bodies and our brains when we kind of give up that part of our life, that learning and that creative part of our lives. So when we get to the point where our lives seem to have gone off the rails, they don't feel like ours anymore, we have to come back to the curiosity and the learning of who we are so that then we can find out, okay, what's my real goal? Was it really that I wanted to be a doctor? Was it really that I wanted a $2 million house? Like, do people feel better when they live in a $2 million house? 99.999% of the time, no. Now they just have new boundaries, new fences that they need to tend to instead of getting down to the heart of the matter that's really going to lead to their fulfillment and their happiness and their joy. So I think it's so important to get to, and I know you do this with your clients too, to get to the real why behind the goals so that we can really start moving in that direction. Because so often the things that we think we want are just further things that we're putting in that backpack that's going to pull us deeper down below that water line because it's just holding us down.
That's so great. Okay, it leads perfectly into my next question. So, what's your personal tip for living your best life?
Really staying centered on that it is your life. Never lose focus on that. And when you get that little feeling of dissonance, should be kind of a dirty word. I don't believe in like
I
bad
agree.
words, I mean, just words are words, but like should be a dirty, dirty, dirty word. If you hear an inner voice saying, I should, okay, hazard lights on, slow down. What do you mean by that? And does that serve me and my purpose in my life and the people that truly love me and that are on this journey with me? They're not just kind of standing on the sidelines and trying to benefit from the journey or enjoy it, eat popcorn, watching what's going to happen next. No, like really for me and for what matters to me, does this serve me? It may sound selfish when you start doing it, but when you really lean into that and live it, you live a life so full of energy and purpose that you can do far more better good in the world than you ever could have done when you were people pleasing.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, with all that you have experienced, you've been a musician, which obviously required a number of hours, years of training, performing, etc. Then you went on to medicine. You've lived in different areas, not only in the United States, but of course, internationally. So, with all you've accomplished, or better yet, experienced, even, however you want to say, how would you say coaching, investing in your personal development, what value has that had for you in your life?
I feel that it's had the greatest impact on my feeling of purpose and living in alignment, which those can be, you used the term earlier, woo-woo. But when you start doing that and when you really invest in knowing yourself and you get those data points, as we were discussing earlier, and you look at that, you examine it and you say, what does life look like when I'm living in alignment, when I really understand what that means and I refuse to abandon myself and my values and my beliefs and my goals, my true goals? That is so life-changing, and the amount of energy that you get back, right? Because at the end of our lives, as a neurologist, caring for people with dementia and strokes and things of that nature, that they're coming into the hospital and it's the end of their life. What's the one thing that they want? They want time. They want connection. Often we are trying to keep someone alive for minutes or hours so that they can say goodbye to the people that mean the most to them in their life. That's what really matters. Our time and our energy, our life force, those are the only things that matter. So when you invest in life coaching and you find someone who can not take the keys from you, but help guide you to take the keys to your life back and take your energy back, that's the best investment you could ever make in yourself.
Fantastic. It's been such a joy just having you on and hearing about your experience, not only personally, but professionally, getting to dive in. And I love how, the multiple perspectives were covered throughout this time together, throughout this wonderful conversation. Listeners, I want to share with you that, Dr. Shafer is all about mastering her mindset. She also is very passionate about empowering young children through literature and using your voice for good. Now, here on Your Best Podcast, we value using your voice for good so much because, hey, making the world a better place, remembering the true reality of who we are and what we're here for and what is important is just the utmost. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Shafer. And then I'll have you, I don't want to mispronounce it. I have your website here, but please share with us your website where people can connect with you online.
Yeah. So it's drshaferstedronova.com. And there you can find links to Talks with Dr. Shafer and other resources we have, coaching. And I would just love for you to be a part of my community. I also have a community, a Facebook page called We Don't Tell Our Stories, that is there to also serve as a place for people who have experienced domestic abuse and violence, intimate partner violence in their life, a place for them to go and access resources and feel seen through things like articles and music and media, so that they can also start that journey back to reclaiming their story. So there's so much there that we want to share, to use storytelling as a tool to help people reclaim their stories and live their most beautiful lives.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And of course, the information is going to be in the show notes. As for me, my name is Teemaree. I'm your best life coach. And if you are interested in getting together for life coaching or for health coaching, both of those methods will help you to have that different perspective, to be able to navigate those questions in your life and get to your next best. You can reach me at bestlifecoaching.online or teemaree.com. And everything's going to be in the show notes for all of us. And just connect, because we love connecting with you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we can't wait to see you at our next week's episode. So make sure, if you haven't already, follow, rate, review, and comment, because we love to hear from you. And definitely reach out and connect. Thank you, Dr. Shafer. And thank y'all for tuning in to Your Best Podcast.